Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm a total fraud sitting anywhere here because I have nothing to do with this, but I work for Thame Town Council. My name is Becky Reed, and we are thrilled to host this. Cosy Thame is a project, one of many that's been run as part of Thame Green Living and the Green Living Plan, which is a plan created by a group of volunteers that Thame Town Council adopted. And this is one of them, and it's super exciting. So I'm going to hand over to David after just a couple of practical announcements. For anyone who hasn't been here before, toilets are down these stairs and round to the left. If there is a fire alarm, which we're not expecting, there's fire exits both ways. And if you can go out, the congregation point is just at the entrance to Greyhound Walk. So yeah, that's me, and I will hand over to David.
Thanks very much, Becky. My name's David Dawson. I am a Thame resident. 13 years this year since I moved in. I live in the top end of Thame in Park Terrace, just opposite the BP garage. I got interested in this project last year when suddenly we could see all the fuel prices soaring through the roof. And I thought it would be useful to try to do something to help people in Thame, which was when I was very fortunate to bump into Nige Forshaw, who is actually Wing Commander Nige Forshaw, retired. Just. And he flies drones. He's got a company called Rubicon Drones. Actually lives around the corner to me in Thame. And you may have seen some of his work. He did two beautiful films now, isn't it? One which is the winter one as well. The other one was in lockdown, if I remember rightly, flying through the streets of Thame.
Last year.
Yeah. And so not quite in lockdown. And they're on the Thame Town Council website?
The Thame Museum is showing the summer version.
Right.
And they're both on Love Thame,
right,
which is on Facebook.
And well worth looking at. They're really beautiful films. Anyway, I asked Nigel, and he said, yes. Nigel, sorry. And he said, yes. And then we did all the videoing, and we did some still images, which I'll tell you about in a short while. And then we thought we ought to tell everybody what we found out. This is very much a pilot project, and I'm very grateful to Thame Green Living, and Charles is there from Thame Green Living, I see, this evening. Thank you very much for hosting Cosy Thame in its infancy as we're trying to get everything going. And I thought we need to give some people advice as well as just showing them what we found. And who better than citizens' advice to be able to also give us some advice. So Karen Hayward from Citizens' Advice is here this evening. And we will be open for questions in the fullness of time. We want to try to crack through showing everything. We finish at 8, that's the plan. And we will try to allow lots of time to be able to get questions. When we do, I'll remind you at the time, I'll try to get the microphone to you, because as you'll see, we are doing an experiment this evening and actually streaming live, you are live, on Thame Television, on YouTube with this, for people that aren't able to make it. This is an experiment, and we want to see whether it works or not and how successful it is. But obviously, if you're asking questions, the people at home won't be able to hear them unless there's a microphone to you, so I need to make sure I get that to you. Right, any questions before I start? No? Apologies also that this was supposed to be at the end of January, and on the morning, or the lunchtime of that day when it was supposed to happen, I had eye problems. I just had eye surgery for a detached retina, or a tear in my retina. And I ended up going back to Stoke Mandeville Hospital. So we had to cancel at incredibly short notice, and Becky was wonderful in trying to notify everybody as much as possible, but I know a few people slipped through that net, but we did our best. So apologies for rescheduling it, and it is definitely happening this evening. So the aim of what we were doing was to use the thermal imaging drone, but also to use a thermal imaging camera, which I was hoping to show you, but unfortunately it's had to go back to South Oxfordshire District Council, who owns them, because it's very much in demand. But if you can imagine a speed camera at the side of the road, a handheld one, being pointed at you, that's what it looks like. And it takes thermal pictures of your home. And last September, October I think it was, when we had the Thame Driver event, electric, thank you very much, event in the Market Square, we invited people to sign up for an experiment to be able to take images of their homes, snapshots. And I hasten to add snapshots. I'm not an expert in thermal imaging. I'm learning quite a bit about it now. Nigel's not an expert in thermal imaging, although he knows a hell of a lot about it now. He's been really burning up on it. But there are professional survey companies that do this. So what we are trying to do was to raise people's awareness of some of the common issues that you have with your homes and what you might be able to do in order to improve the thermal efficiency of your home. In other words, lose less heat. If you lose less heat, and you not only reduce the amount of heat that you have to burn, you reduce your fuel consumption, you also reduce your carbon footprint, and you also make your home cozier because it's not so drafty. So that was the aim. So we got 30-something, 35 people signed up, and then we had a really mild winter so far, with some really cold. You remember just before Christmas, it was really cold in December. And it's a real problem because in order to do the thermal imaging, it needs to be cold because we need you to have your heating on. Otherwise, we can't see the heat pouring out the windows or the doors or whatever. So we were stuck for that. And then when it got cold, we were borrowing thermal imaging cameras and they were much in demand. So we were on a waiting list to borrow them. So we weren't able to get to everybody's homes. I do apologize for that, but it's the way things were. We've got to about 17, 18 homes in the end. No, it's 20 in the end that we managed to get to. But obviously that's a tiny proportion of the number of homes in Thame. But this was a pilot. We wanted to see what was possible, and what we are now planning to do is, well, we've applied for a grant to be able to buy a thermal imaging camera for Thame. So next winter there'll be one that people will be able to borrow and be able to, and it will be exclusively for Thame and the villages around Thame, and you'll be able to use it on your home. So that's where we've got to with this pilot project. And as I say, we're volunteers, we're doing it because we feel it's really important for Thame to be able to do this. But we're learning as well, and we made quite a few mistakes in the way that we did things. But as a result, I've learned a hell of a lot about what we can actually do. We also found out where we can get grants from, and where we can get extra funding, and we're going to be providing that kind of information as well. But what I want to do first of all is to hand over to Nige, who could talk a bit more about thermal imaging.
Sure.
And what it does. And then we can look at some of the videos that Nige shot.
Right, okay. Well, good evening all. Can you hear me at the back? Yeah. Right, so what is thermal imagery? Well, we're all used to seeing an image on television because we can see that image. We can all feel heat, but we can't see heat. It's because heat is effectively infrared. And infrared is out of the scope of what our eyes can see. So effectively, we have, as David's just been saying, mobile thermal cameras, and we also have a thermal camera mounted on this very light drone on the front, and this is the drone that we used around Christmas to actually do the aerial filming from. When David and I were standing out in -4, and you're in your nice cozy houses. So thermal imagery is basically infrared, and then what happens is the thermal camera, through a combination of lenses and electronic gizmos, turns that infrared into an image that we can all see. And basically, you'll see in a moment, it's made up of different colors, and the different colors represent different temperatures. And I'll explain that when we have a look at the imagery, what purple means and what yellow means. But basically, there we are. Okay. So don't worry too much if you can't see too clearly. But basically, this is a thermal infrared image. And we use what's called a thermal palette. And the thermal palette is basically describes which colors that we're using to describe the different temperatures. So here, I haven't got a pointer, but this is a bird's eye view of a property in Thame. So you can probably make out the roof. The majority of the roofs are in blue. And then you'll see orange and yellow bits. Okay? The orange and the yellow are of a warmer temperature. So this is indicating, and just to stress, as David said, we're not thermography experts, but it's indicating to us that there may be some issue with these roofs. It may be due to construction. It may be due to insulation issues. It may be that you've got a strong heat source, perhaps underneath that particular part of the roof. Thermography is a science, and it can be affected by an awful lot of influences. David's already mentioned that you've got to wait until you have a wide divide between the ambient temperature of outside and the temperature whatever you're measuring. And therefore, the best time for me to actually go out and do any thermal imagery is in the dark, in the winter, in the freezing cold, about 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't particularly want to be doing that, but that's the best time because buildings are at their warmest, but the outside temperature is at its coldest, and therefore you'll get this contrast. But, as we will see from some images a bit later on this evening, is that what you actually are seeing can be affected by a number of different reasons. For example, it's called emissivity, basically what the material it is that you're actually filming. If it's really, really shiny, then that might just affect the results. If it's glass, that'll affect it, etc. So we've always got to be careful about saying we have a problem. It could just very well be that what we're filming could be made of a different material. It could be that this bit is painted and that bit is not, and therefore it gives different reflectivity. So thermal imagery, in a nutshell, it's basically infrared, and basically we are measuring temperature variances. So,
what are the range of temperatures then? Difference in there?
Sorry, can I just... can you repeat the question?
Yes, so the question from the audience is, what is the range of temperatures? Okay, now the images that we'll be showing you this evening, we haven't included the range of temperatures. We're just giving you an indication through different colours to show you where the spots are. But when I'm filming this, my monitor is actually showing me what the temperature differences are. For example, last week I was filming Thame Town Council's depot, their roof, and basically there was a 3 degrees difference in between all of their large windows, the ceiling windows, which was letting out all the heat, and the glass roof. But if you employed a thermography surveyor to actually do this, or in fact your handheld,
so on the handheld camera, and you'll see some of the images later, it was about -5 when I was out there with lots of socks on. And some of the temperatures on the wall were about +1 of the exterior wall of the house. That wasn't good, really. That sort of heat shouldn't have been coming through the wall. It varies enormously, and I'm still learning how to use that camera because there are various settings on it, but this pilot has been very useful for me to make all those mistakes on Thame's behalf, so that when hopefully we do get one that Thame can use, I'll have a complete guide as to how basically to set things up so that you get accurate readings for your home each time. So,
I presume, it's not my field of expertise at all, I presume that if you can roughly estimate the area where the heat loss is occurring and the number of degrees of heat loss, you can work that out into the actual kilocalories of heat being lost?
Yes, you could if you needed to.
I presume it's calculable.
yeah, absolutely.
Because we're all concerned about kilowatts of energy going
Yeah.
out.
What I want to show you quickly, sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's fine.
That's okay. But I've got quite a useful, two useful slides here to show you. This, I don't know if you've seen this before, but it shocked me. It shows the amount of heat that a home loses over a 5-hour period across Europe. So for Germany or Sweden, they lose about 1 degree per 5-hour period. Homes in the UK lose 3 degrees, 3 times as much heat, on average this is, than countries in Europe. So we do have a problem in the UK. We know that's a problem because we've got some of the oldest housing stock in Europe, and we need to retrofit that with insulation, with all sorts of other measures to improve the thermal efficiency of those homes. But on a house level, this was also something quite interesting I found, because when we were using the drone, we did discover that most homes were quite good in terms of their loft insulation, it appeared.
Yeah, the roofs on the whole, apart from my house, which you'll see, my house is terrible. But yes, the vast majority of the roofs looked okay, didn't they? There was the odd spot, but the roofs were fine, yeah.
But this I found really interesting. So up to 20, if you've got a badly insulated house, then up to 25% of the heat loss can be through the roof. But actually up to 35% can be through the walls. So if it's possible to do cavity wall insulation or to retrofit cladding of some kind that works properly, you can make a better saving, a bigger saving. So it's not as simple, right, I'll stick in some more double glazing or whatever. You need to balance these things because they cost money. Everything costs money. I think what's really interesting is that if we then look to the improvements, if you have decently insulated loft, you can drop that 25% heat loss down to 8% when it's properly done. 35% heat loss down to 12%. You're never going to, there are things called passive houses where they are pretty well perfect. They've got very good controlled ventilation and they're recovering the heat from the ventilation and so on, so you don't get moisture in the house. But even those aren't entirely perfect. You can never get down to zero, but you can certainly improve on what we've got currently here in the UK in quite a lot of homes. And in even quite recently built homes, maybe in the last 40, 50 years, the building standards have improved a great deal in recent years. But some of the older ones really need a lot doing to them. And some of the retrofitting that was done wasn't done very well. Nige, did you want to...
I think I've given a brief explanation of what thermography is. So basically, all the images that you see, it's just a graphical representation of heat through color. Okay, and so we'll see more images and the video, an edited version of the hours of thermal imagery video that we did over Christmas as well. Unless anyone's got any more questions, sir.
Thank you, Lloyd.
Are you pointing the camera vertically downwards all the time, or do you take shots downwards and also at an angle so you can see the walls and windows?
Excellent question, and that was not a planted question either. But we did both. We do vertical bird's eye view and angled, or as I call it, oblique. Yeah. So basically you will see, although the video is quite brief, as I said, we've edited down just for this evening, there's quite a lot of that, bird's eye view, but also oblique. I think we did some nice stuff of where you live, David. Your road.
In Park Terrace,
in
yes.
Park Terrace, where it's oblique. And there you will see what David's talking about, as in terms of when you're looking at the thermal property of the roof compared to the thermal properties of the walls and the windows and the doors and the garages. Some of this imagery will answer your question. Some of it is a bit of an eye-opener in terms of build quality, questionable build quality, and the simple things that you can do in terms of better quality curtains, maybe insulating the inside of your garage door, you know. But they're very indicative that, you know, when you get a thermal image, you can say, I can see where I can save 2% of energy through spending a few pounds, you know, and that's what we're trying to do. We're not here to solve the issues, we're here to raise awareness this evening. But yes, long answer to your question, but yes, you can see both. Yeah.
I think we've been teasing long enough, dude. Shall we show some video?
Let's show some video. Are you going to show the video that I did?
The one that you compiled.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, so what we're going to do, this video is about 6 minutes long. I must have done 10 times that amount, but we've edited it down. Please, at any stage, if you want to interrupt and ask a question or make a comment or say, oh, that's my house, then please do, because this evening is for you. And we will try and help you as much as we can in terms of explaining what you see on the screen.
Right, ready?
Yeah, ready?
Can you see that okay at the back?
You could do some of the lights.
Yeah.
Do these lights on the side here.
Yeah, sure. We have limited. We turn these ones on.
Here as well, by the look.
What's that, sorry?
Time travel as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, obvious error, yes.
So that's my proofreading.
This is
up
when
the Swanee,
David
isn't
changed the
it?
date on me. Yeah. So, as I was explaining, if you could just...
What's that from?
Can everybody see that okay now? Wonderful.
And I'm not in the way.
Thank you. So as I said, when we do thermal imagery, I also do search and rescue using the thermal drone. I'm a member of what's called DOGSAR, which is search and rescue for dogs. And I was using this particular drone doing search and rescue a couple of months ago, and the capabilities are phenomenal to trying to find things. So you use different palettes, different colors. If you've ever seen any of the police TV shows, they use black and white because the white just pings out straight away from the image. But for this evening, I'm using the majority of what's called iron red or rainbow, and that basically shows better coverage of trying to spot where the heat spots are. But there's about a dozen, so David, please. Okay, just pause it there. So that's just what I'm talking about. So you've got about 10 different thermal palettes. So we're using iron red, where basically deep purple is the coldest, and then orange and yellow is the warmest. And then rainbow 2, the coldest is blue, and then it ranges to the right. Okay, thanks, David. How is it we're only seeing part of the screen? We seem to have lost some of it.
I'm afraid it's
No matter. So basically,
It's what it is.
I've got a very clever drone that basically, as well as doing thermal, it's also got night vision. So the image on the right-hand side, which you can't see, is also a night vision image video of what we're filming as well. There we are. That's.
But we then lose the other one.
Yeah, I would just go back a little bit, David, because the most important thing is the thermal image. So whilst we've still got that still image, this is a very good example in terms of, here we see internal combustion engine vehicles, ICE, the petrol and the diesel, and you can see which vehicles have been recently driven. Because obviously you've got very warm engines at the front. So that is a good indication now for the rest of the video that we'll be showing you. Warm is the ready black, orange and yellow, and then we've got the cool purples. So you can see just from this still image before the video runs on, we have a fairly regular, good-looking roof there with just one heat vent on the top. See that yellow spot? Yeah. Okay, so straight away that's showing to me that this particular roof, in my opinion, looks okay in terms of insulation and no major heat loss. And then you can sort of make out the tops of the people getting out the vehicle, and you can also make out a little window as well. Okay, David. I think this is Hellier's Close as well, isn't it? We've missed
Hollier's Close.
Hollier's Close,
Yeah.
excuse me, yeah. I do live in town.
So there's something there which is unusual.
Yeah.
It's on the roof.
Okay, so I don't know what that is, but obviously what we could do is go to that resident and say, we've noticed at the back of your property, I don't know what that would be, an extension or whatever, there seems to be like a strip of heat coming out. I noticed when I was looking at a recent property where a building joined a ramp at the base, there was an awful lot of heat seepage, as though perhaps the two buildings hadn't been connected properly. So all of this nice heat inside the building was just leaking out and flowing at base level, as David was saying, losing a lot of heat from the ground.
I went on a course, I didn't know this, I forgot to tell him, just 2 days ago about the thermal imaging, and one of the issues is what they call thermal bridges. And so that does look like an extension that's being built, and it's being built pretty efficiently, apart from that bit where the builder hasn't either got an air gap or hasn't got insulation gap at that particular bit. And maybe they've skipped on things because they were in a rush, and they've used a lot of expanded polystyrene in order just to fill a hole, and the heat's going out through there.
Well, just you wait until you see my house. Okay, thanks, David. So we're just crossing Holliers now, heading towards the wreck, and this is the other side of Holliers now. Again, so this, you were saying about a slightly oblique view. So now you can see the front of these buildings. Just pause there, please, David. Right, now you see somebody's garage there, bright orange. That does not necessarily mean that there's an awful lot of heat which is escaping from that garage. As I said to you at the very beginning, different materials give off different readings. That's quite a thin piece of metal. It might be during the day that actually that's stored a lot more heat. That could be the reason, it probably is the reason. But then again, you also look at other people's windows. This one here on the far right, perhaps, where you've got this strip of warm. That obviously shows that heat is escaping somehow through a curtain, or whatever it might be.
And also this cross, which is on...
Oh, well, we're going to come up to that. Just roll it a little bit more.
Sorry.
Okay, stop there. I've no idea what that is, but can everybody see that cross, warm cross on the right-hand side?
I do, that's my house.
Oh, wow!
Oh, wow! What is it?
I actually think it's the vent.
Sorry, let me
If
just
we
get the
might
mic.
just give you the mic so everyone can hear you.
Your house, yes?
Yeah, that's my property. I think it's the vent from our next door neighbour and also the vent from our boiler. We both have combi boilers, so that will be releasing when it hits a certain pressure.
But it's interesting that it's actually not in one location. It seems to be...
Yeah, it's...
Yeah. So that's the sort of thing, to me, by seeing quite
and also
a large...
we have 2 windows down the side of the house, so that will be those 2 higher windows that are in our kitchen as well.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much. To me, thank you very much for the explanation. That would probably be worth investigating, because that could be right, or it could be an infrastructure issue. Who knows? But that looked, when David and I were filming, and he was overlooking my shoulder when I had my remote, and we said, "My word, that looks rather unusual." So yeah, thank you for the explanation. We'll wait and see. Hopefully that's what it is. Okay, roll on, please. And there we can see your dormer window.
I'll just pause it there.
Okay, so as you can see, there's quite a lot of what looks like heat loss from a dormer window. So again, it's worth checking to see how much of that area is being covered or not. Yeah.
Is that Holly's close again? Yes, it's Holly's close.
Yeah, that's the same shot, but just a photograph. Okay.
Pause it there.
Yeah. Again, it's just indicative in terms of where the heat is potentially escaping from a building. Here, it's escaping through the glass. Now, as I said, each material has different thermal properties. Your glass is a lot thinner than brick, and that's the reason why this is probably showing at a higher temperature. But even so, there is still quite an extreme in the colours here, an extreme in the different temperatures. So, and you can clearly see here that this house on the left is probably occupied as opposed to the building on the right, which is not. Or the house on the right has got some really, really, really good insulation. I suspect not. But again, it's indicative in terms of where you're going to be losing the heat. This is clearly showing us through the windows and through your front door, what can you do? Yeah, you can thicker curtains, close the curtains. You can only do so much, of course, but that would be a good idea. Moving on.
Yeah.
That house you said might not be occupied. From here, there is a slight glow from the window.
You're right. That's interesting.
Which
Yes.
suggests there is somebody in the house.
Or the chimney's glowing as well. Actually.
Maybe.
They've got very, very good windows or curtains or both.
Or maybe everything is boarded up. Okay, so we actually, I filmed, with David's help as my observer, we actually filmed 5 areas in Thame. So this was Hamilton Drive. This is using the palette called Rainbow 2. This basically shows a wider range of different temperatures using different colours. So as you can see here, slight cause for concern, perhaps, in terms of where we've got these houses joining together, where you've got the orange and yellows. Is that video, David? Is that scrolling forward?
Yeah, I paused it. So
Please carry on, yeah. And as David said, this is a pilot project. What we'd like to do is actually go back and revisit. Because what we want to do is, trying to be as scientific as possible, is not base all of our assumptions just on one pass. We'd want to go back and maybe do it again. We'd also love to see, and I think David was suggesting at the EV day, is that we looked at people's properties, we assessed their requirements, they put in some insulation or whatever, and we went back and did another on another visit just to see if there was some hopeful improvement.
I just paused it on that so you can see that.
Yeah, okay, you can let it roll, David.
Yeah.
But as you can see now, that looks a bit worrying, doesn't it? In terms of the amount of heat that seems to be generating at the top, the apex of that roof compared to the rest of it.
And why is the ground so warm?
Again, it's just through thermal properties. There will be patches which are just like concrete compared to grass. And it's a bit like when they say if you're wearing black or white, that some will reflect, some will retain heat. That's all it is that on the ground, all of the blue, the different variations of the blue, that will be the grass, and then the orange bits, to a degree. If we could see the image on the right, that would be really helpful. But don't worry, David, don't worry. That'll probably be concrete or something else.
That definitely looks like a path going diagonally.
Well, there you are. Yeah, you can see a path going across there. Yeah.
Were these all 3 o'clock in the morning?
No, this was about 8 o'clock in the evening, but it was a field temperature of -3. At least. Yeah, but that's what we were waiting for, cold weather. And there's just a close-up of what we've just been talking about. So we're still in Hamilton Drive, just crossing the road. This is using the palette of iron red. So again, it's the same area, but just using different colours, just to actually show you what we've been talking about. So you can see now where the heat vents are on the roof. I suppose there's not an awful lot you can be doing about that.
So actually, no, I can't quite remember. Some of the walls, it's possible. Sorry, yes. Some of the walls, it's possible that they've absorbed heat from the sun during the day, and they're emitting that now at night time and radiating. So we saw that path and the patio, for example, where that was glowing orange. That was giving out its residue heat that it heated up during the day. So that's entirely possible. As I say, this is inexact because of our expertise. Sorry, sir, you've got a question.
one of the things you notice when you see the police thermal imaging is that criminals or others can be seen hiding under bushes, and that's where they can be identified. So my question is, on all those last images, the windows shine up, but is that the temperature of the glass on the outside or the glass on the inside? Because in double glazing, it may be very different. So in other words, can you pick up actually the temperature of the glass on the inside of double glazing? And then strictly, that isn't telling you about heat loss, it's just telling you about the relative temperature of the glass.
Working backwards, yes, it's telling you the surface temperature of the outside of the glass.
Only the outside?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what we can do with the stills camera is you can use it inside as well as outside. And you're able to, first of all, calibrate it. So you're calibrating it for the emissivity, as Nigel referred to, of glass as opposed to of brickwork or of stone. And then you can look on the inside and look at the temperature differential between the two. And then you can start to look at the efficiency of the double glazing that you've got. When I went round with the stills camera, and I'll show you this in a minute, it was interesting. One of the houses in Nelson Street that I did, they'd put in a new super duper double glazed window that summer, and it was very noticeable that it was far more efficient compared with the older ones that they actually had.
Well, that's very clever.
Very useful. It's also reassuring for them because they're now going to replace the others because they now feel confident that it is actually saving them some money.
Okay, yeah, so good question, thank you. Basically, the thermal camera is picking up heat sources.
Yeah.
Okay, so for example, when I was looking for this dog, I thought I'd found it, and it was actually a badger 1 meter underground in its set. It's very, very impressive, you know. We did find the dog on another day as well, so the story ended well.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are still in Hamilton.
Yeah.
Just a few photographs. Again, just similar imagery than what we've just seen. But yeah, again, potential cause for concern in terms of why are we seeming to lose heat where these houses are joining. And it could very well be just poor insulation at those points, perhaps. Here's an oblique view. Again, David's absolutely right. Just pause it there for a minute. David's absolutely right, is in terms of items that you're measuring heat from will retain heat. I did a thermal imagery of the Barn Centre, and it was noted when I provided the imagery is, why are the gravestones glowing? which is next to the Barn Centre here in Thame. And that's because the stone during the day had received all of that heat and was slowly emitting it off in the evening. Nothing funny was going on, that's just the properties of the gravestones. Thank you. So now we're in David's neck of the wood, Park Terrace. What type of houses are these, David?
So on one side, they were built about 25 years ago. The other side, they're Victorian, built in the 1860s.
So again, we're using the palette of iron red. Look how hot that chimney is in comparison to the rest of the roof. And again, you can see just the dormer windows next to the chimney, around the outside in terms of there's a glow. Potentially, we could be looking at some sort of heat escape there. Again, a good view of the chimney. Just
Let's show them back up on that. You saw those chimneys a moment ago glowing. That was a cluster of chimney pots that was there. I can tell you for now, because I know that was my neighbour's house and my house, and that the fires weren't lit at all. The thing with chimneys, if you've got unused chimneys, you can block them. You can get things called chimney balloons from a DIY place, and that allows you to be able to stop heat going up the chimney, but it also allows you to take it out again in the future if ever you wanted to, and it also makes sure that you don't get moisture condensation problems with the chimney. And a chimney balloon is a really good way, particularly in older houses where you've got lots of chimney stacks in different rooms, to stop heat just soaring up those chimneys.
So this is the other side of Park Terrace now. We can see this standalone building on the left. Relatively consistent temperature, colour from the roof, apart from various patches on the apex. They may be heat vents, perhaps. But then you've also got...
Just ventilation. And
you've got this strip along there. And again, that might be worth investigating. Yes, sir.
Sorry, are you able to go back to the just previous...
The chimneys?
Let me have
the chimney shot?
Yeah. And I appreciate it's difficult to take the video back.
Give me a moment. It's finding the controls.
Just about 2 seconds.
Oh, I've got the wrong one. That's not helpful. Sorry about this.
A bit further on.
Tell us when to pause.
Yeah. Pause there. So the top of the image...
Can I just pass you the mic?
That big orange square?
Yeah, it looks like an entire section of insulation's been left out of that extension. Is that right?
No, that is actually a gap in construction. So that is the floor, that is the ground that you can see there. That big orange square. That is a space
between... Oh no, it means the triangle. Do you mean the triangle bit?
The trapezium,
yeah. I
yeah.
thought you were talking about further up.
Yeah, the trapezium section, it looks like a quarter of an extension roof is entirely missed out.
Yeah.
Right, again, what could be causing that? It could be heat being reflected off the main wall onto that roof itself. And that's why it's showing a different temperature from the other three. That's what I suspect it is.
That's my neighbour Helen, who had that extension built 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I think. So that's really actually interesting that there is something that she needs to go back to the builders on and have that checked out.
Potentially.
Yeah.
If that was patchy, if that wasn't all orange, then that might raise a question mark for me. But the fact is that it is all one colour. That suggests to me, with my knowledge, is that what's that happening is that that is just the heat which is coming off the vertical brick wall is basically being reflected on that section which is facing to make it a different temperature from the rest. That's what I suspect.
On the positive, if you see this chimney stack here, the left-hand one is glowing, there's heat being lost up through it, but the right-hand one seems to be blocked, so there's not heat being lost up that chimney stack.
Okay, David, should we move on? Sorry, that's what I thought you were talking about, the big gap. Yeah. I'm sure some developer could get another house in there.
So these are the modern houses.
Yeah, just keep it going. So what we did 2 passes and the 2 different palettes, just to see if we could actually spot anything differently on the evening.
I think it's interesting on that roofs, on the top of those roofs, you can see hot spots there, just above the dormer windows.
Yeah. We also did Rackets Fitness Club and Lee Court as well. So this is the roof of Rackets, which looks good. The reason is I was told they didn't have much heating on that day anyway. This is Lee Court, so straight away you can see where they're losing heat. Some of the residents here, in terms of the tops of the windows. Obviously you've got this massive heat vent on the roof. There's not an awful lot you can do that about, I would imagine. Okay, moving on. It's a shame we can't cap that energy, isn't it? Yeah. So this is Rackets Fitness. Again, you can see from this oblique, this side view, looking at the windows. Again, they've got a kitchen just here. That's why we've got this massive amount of heat going through the top. I'm not too sure what's happening top left, but obviously it's a different type of construction of roof, which is, you've got slight gaps where there's heat being lost there.
When we talked to Sue at Rackets and pointed that out to her, she said, it's freezing cold in the bar, but there's all that heat coming out from all the woks being heated. Maybe we could channel that heat into the bar instead. So she's.
It would be amazing if you could. Just think of all that heat which is just being wasted. Okay, moving on.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So this is where I live, Ewins Drive, southern part of Thame. So this is using Rainbow 2 pallets. Again, that roof looks quite good in terms of its insulation capabilities. Stop there. That's my house. So straight away that you can see myself and my neighbour's house. So this property was built 20 years ago in the old BP oil refinery, I think. But straight away you can see at the apex of the roof we're losing quite a lot of heat through to probably construction technique and probably poor insulation. I need to go into my loft and check to see what's happening there. And you'll actually find, I think this is called a Langley, the design. There's some more imagery of another Langley on the same estate, which has exactly the same issue as me, or my home. Okay, moving on. So stop there. So this is the front of my house. So straight away you see we have issues in the top left-hand corner and the top right of my neighbour. The amount of heat that's potentially being lost through my windows, despite I've got thermal curtains and whatnot, what's going on there.
Have you got double glazing as well?
Yeah, I've got double glazing.
Can actually keep absorbing and reflecting back so the glass could have got warm in the daytime?
Yes. This is the point I was making before, is that don't take that I'm losing a lot of heat from my windows. It's just that those windows are a different temperature from my roof and from my walls, is because they're made of different properties and therefore heat retention and the amount of heat which is being dispelled is differently. But what would be nice to see if you had, let's say, two windows in the same property, one with really good thermal properties like curtains drawn and whatever, and one not, just to see what the comparison would be. Yeah. But that is just showing to me where the warm spots are. But the roof is a good example because roofs should be uniformly insulated. It's apparent to me that that's not the case. If just keep on rolling, Dave, you can see my neighbour's house on the right. They have no particular issues. Different house design, probably different internal construction, different insulation. That's the other Langley that I was telling you about. Exactly the same problem as my property. Good example again in terms of where you can see all the bad patches of heat loss through the top of a roof. Don't forget, warm air goes into cold places, so it's obviously rising. So and that's going to be an issue. And going back to your point, sir, right? Okay, that's the back of my house in my orangery, the back. And the reason why it's a bit orange is it's probably reflecting all of the heat from my rear brick wall. Okay. That's me. That's the imagery we did on the evening. Do you have any questions? Thank you.
What does a thatch roof look like?
In theory, a thatched roof should look really good because that's, 1-2 feet of insulation? We spoke about this, didn't we?
Thatched roofs are very efficient, apparently. All the data says you just have to keep replacing them, from what I understand. But yes, they are very efficient, apparently. And also the houses that have thatched roofs typically have smaller windows, and therefore there's less heat loss through the windows as well. Yeah.
My house is thermally insulated between the walls. One of the rooms is relatively dark. We thought recently about redecorating it with light reflecting paint. Now, for those people that have got cavity wall insulation, is it likely that putting light reflecting paint on the inside walls will also reflect heat back into the rooms?
I don't know is the honest answer. However, and there's a contact which I'll leave you at the end, a group in Oxford called the Low Carbon Hub have got a lot of resources and can give a lot of advice. So I urge you to contact them, and they'll be able to put you onto one of their experts who'll be able to advise you on that, and also a lot of other advice as
It
well.
does seem logical to me. If there are certain paints that are going to reflect, if there are certain paints that are going to reflect light back into the room, that's also going to reflect heat back into the room. So a relatively quick and relatively cheap fix for many people might be to redecorate the whole of the house internally with light reflecting paints.
It could be, in theory, you're probably right. It's to the degree that I would perhaps question in terms of, for the you know, you've always got to weigh up expense v benefit. You know, we could all recommend that we went out this evening and spent £1,000 on buying really good thermal property curtains or doing something else amazing in your house. You know, and then you've got to weigh up in terms of the economic benefits of actually doing that. So repainting the property, perhaps yes, but to what degree would be the benefit? And this is, David's absolutely right, refer to the experts. Yeah.
So I want to quickly go through a few of the still images that I took, because I want to bring Karen in, who's been sitting here very patiently on a few things. So let me quickly go through the thermal imaging camera that we used. This is a home in one of the first homes I did in Chinner Road. You can see the temperature chart on the side there. Somebody was asking. It was blooming cold. I could tell you when I was out there. The house was really, really warm on the thermal imaging camera. And when I went inside, it was roasting. And the very nice lady who was inside was a yoga instructor. And so she was wearing a thin little bit of lycra and not a great deal else. And the home was like a sauna, but quite a bit of it was actually coming out of it as well, as you can see, and at the back of the house as well. An interesting, the front door doesn't look that efficient that they've got, and more could be done with that. And also you can see around the apex of the roof again some heat loss. This is my back window, which I know is really leaky, and it's horribly leaky, particularly through the frame as well. It's an old metal frame. Metal frames aren't necessarily great, and they can be thermal bridges, getting heat from inside the house to the outside. So it would be well worth me replacing that. But you can also see this is a solid wall. It's the old part of the Victorian house, and there's quite a bit of leakage through the bottom of the wall. And I can't. This is on the back of the house, so I can clad it. So potentially I could put some cladding on. I can't. If I did it on the inside, I'd lose space inside the room. But I could build something on the outside. But I need to get a professional in to be able to do that for me.
David, do you have any images of radiator?
Yes, coming on.
Perfect.
This was property in Essex Road. Really interesting, something going on here. Quite a bit of heat getting lost through. It was an Edwardian house there. Quite a bit of heat being lost through that wall. And you can just get a glimpse of it. We see a better example in a minute. Underneath that window, big orange glow, that was a radiator. And I think maybe it's in the next, here we go, Park Terrace, my neighbour. Two massive great glows from the radiators in the bedrooms upstairs, where they're just heating the street with their radiators. And what you can do is buy this stuff, which maybe a lot of you have seen it, but it's not that expensive. And it comes with sticky strips as well, which allows you to stick it onto the wall behind the radiator. And apparently there's an even more, I learned the other night that there's an even more effective one with fins on it, which apparently creates an air current as well to make the hot air rise up behind.
What do you call that stuff? It's got a name. Just
Stuff to stick behind a radiator.
It's magic. Yeah, it's magic stuff.
I'm
yeah.
sorry, I don't know.
stick it around the inside of the wall.
Sorry.
So my question relates to the scientific approach, and that is, have you got images with and without that behind the radiator to demonstrate the hypothesis that that is going to prevent heat loss through the wall?
Not yet.
The answer is no, but there is plenty of evidence online of that it certainly makes a big difference. Apparently the other thing you can buy, which costs a bit more money, is something that sits on the top of the radiator, and it's got little fans in it, which the same sort of fans as used inside computers. And it blows more of the hot air out into the room and makes the radiator more efficient in blowing it into the room.
But this is a very simple solution, relatively cheap solution, isn't it? Putting this backing on. Yeah. And this is
called stuff to stick behind the radiator.
Yeah. We've just patented it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Radiator reflective foil.
Radiator reflective foil.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. What's interesting about this one, it's better to use than just, getting a bit from the kitchen, from the kitchen. Oh, seriously, because that's very thin and will tear. This is put on a kind of bubble wrap thing on the back, so it's quite a bit more robust, and you can cut it to size. And I found it fiddly to do, but it was worth doing. Talking from experience, it made a difference in the rooms.
It makes sense. If you insulate your loft, why don't you insulate your rooms? So if you've got large heat sources like radiators, which you know very well are giving you warmth, it's not just warming you, it's also warming your walls as well. So why not get something which will reflect at least part of that heat back to you as opposed to the wall?
This is a really nice house in Upper High Street where the chap spent an awful lot of money putting in ground source heat pumps and all sorts of measures. It's a very old house, and he's put in an awful lot of insulation. There's still a problem here, which he's now investigating. There's probably a boiler or some kind of heating system there, but it's heating the outside as well as inside. So we need to look at the temperature scale to bring this into perspective. It was getting down to -8 by this time. It was getting really cold, and that's regional. But and that's only -1, -2. So we have to put this in perspective. It's not like it's red, therefore it's 30 degrees. It's quite cold still. This was a really interesting house. A lovely lady in Ludston Grove who had installed that summer thermal blinds on her conservatory. And you can see they were really effective. They really stopped the heat loss going through. So she's now going to install them on the sidewalls as well. She's now seen that those are really, really effective and make quite a difference.
That's a really good photograph because you look at the ceiling compared to the walls as well.
Yeah.
The difference, yeah.
This was her house from the front, and she knew there was a problem in the loft, and I kind of confirmed it for her. So she's now getting her son to go and sort it out for her. But she knew there was a kind of draft in the hallway through the loft hatch because that wasn't properly insulated. But there are some problems up in the loft which need in the roof space which need sorting.
That's a very patchy roof, isn't it?
Yeah, really
very. Looking at all the other imagery from the drone, how the vast majority were consistent in one colour, apart from the obvious ones like my house. You could see from that image that it was very patchy, and therefore it's worth going up and seeing, how to improve your insulation, which is relatively easy to do.
So this is a house in Conduit Hill Rise. It's interesting whether this was really insulating the home, or whether it's the different emissivity, again, of the material, because that's all wood there that we're looking at. And it looks nice and chilled and doesn't look like it's heating, whereas the brick, which is between those two windows, and also you can see downstairs, seems to be warmer. So it looks like the wood cladding on top of the brick is helping to keep the heat in to that house as well.
Well, I might have put some sort of insulation layer behind the wood. I mean, the wood might itself be insulating, but it could be that they've actually...
Absolutely, absolutely. And we talked a lot about curtains, but I can't emphasise strongly enough how important it is to have thermal curtains. They really do make a difference. And also the key thing is tuck them behind the radiator. Don't heat the window by letting them drape over the radiator.
I grew up in Buffalo, New York, which is quite a cold, I grew up in Buffalo, New York, which is quite a snowy, very cold, long winter time. And most of the houses there are wooden, so wooden cladding. But what was becoming very popular, I've been here for 40 years now, but before I left, what was becoming very popular was interwall insulation, literally pumping foam between the outside layer and the inside plasterboard. I don't know whether with brick houses, probably not so easy with bricks and cinder blocks, but that was a very popular way of getting walls insulated.
Yes, so I've got a property on Lee Park, and it had a cavity in the wall, and in the 1980s or something like that, I think they put in cavity wall insulation, but it was that fluffy stuff, which was then proven to be not good because it settles. It then forms a moisture bridge between the outside wall, and so you get damp inside, and it's just not very effective. And these days it tends to be little beads which they want to blow in, and those are apparently much more effective. But then you get problems sometimes with the beads settling. So at the top of the wall, you still get a certain amount of a thermal bridge, as it's called. Yeah.
On this picture. Hello? Okay. On this picture, I'm just interested in the window there at the top left, how there's that streak of heat loss along the top of the window. My question is that a window vent, or is there heat loss that comes above a thermal curtain? Because I'm wondering whether to put a pelmet across my, above my front door curtain, and I would like anyone who had a view on pelmets, whether that would be worth doing. Going back to the 80s.
Helmets are very attractive as well, I think. But it's very important when you do have double glazing to have vents, because otherwise you do end up with moisture problems and condensation problems in the house. It seems to me a very long vent, and I think that's more likely the lintel above the window, which a lintel goes all the way through. There isn't a cavity in a lintel, and therefore it's forming a thermal bridge, and therefore the heat is being conducted through that stonework to outside. It would certainly help. There's a limit to what you can do, frankly, with lintels. You need them, otherwise the house falls down, so they're kind of important. But there's a limit to what you can do in terms of insulating around them.
I think that's a very good point. There is a limit. That your house will never be 100% efficient. But if you can walk away with a few ideas and, as David will say, point in the right direction of the experts who can assist, then every little bit helps.
So we talked about curtains. We've talked about draft excluders. Courtesy of a Stitch and Tame, by the way, who made over 150 of these, which Citizens Advice gave out, and also the Family Centre, the Red Kite Family Centre did to people in need. They're very easy to make, I discovered. And they're well worth making. If you've got a draft at the bottom of the door, get a draft excluder fitted. Chimney balloons are really important. What was it called again? Radiator?
Reflective
foil. Thank you very much. Radiator reflective foil, or RRF, is also very important to get, and that will really help. But can I take a question in a minute, please? I just want to hand over to Karen, really to ask. There's a lot of money involved, potentially, in doing all of this. There have been grants available from the government or from the county council in the past. What actually is available at the moment?
Right.
Can I do that?
I've got quite a loud voice, so I'm not sure if I'll need this.
I'll take it away.
Just to sort of say, I work with Citizens Advice. I'm based here in Thame. I'm just one of the advisors, so I'm not one of the management or anything more than that. So most of my experience, my personal experience, is based on the issues that are brought to us. And being Citizens Advice, on the whole, the issues that come to us are issues that pertain to people who are usually renting, and so we have fewer inquiries from homeowners. The other thing about Citizens Advice is that a lot of the energy issues and the consumer issues that sort of homeowners who are perhaps sort of having work done to their homes, that's dealt with by our consumer helpline as opposed to, sort of your local Citizens Advice. We are able to look on our system, find some information, but generally would be signposting on to a next level of advice within Citizens Advice or beyond that. There are some grants, so the one that I've heard of is, and I think you have as well, is the Eco Plus sort of grants that are available for people who are seeking grants to get installation installed. One of the issues that Citizens Advice as a national body have found is that it is, as often happens with newer things, it's quite a patchy terrain. It can be quite difficult for people to find reputable tradespeople, people where there are standards of work in place, and that sort of thing. What I would say is that if you are a homeowner and you've had any problems with anything that you've done, consumer helpline is probably a good way to go. If anybody is renting, there are issues between whether people are in social housing or private rental. We've seen tonight the range of problems that can cover the range of types of property, and people who are renting may be in new build, they might be in sort of quite old properties, and all of the, they will be affected by the quality of the build, the age of the property, and of course the relationship with their landlord, which can make things quite difficult. There have been sort of some things that you've suggested today that we would be saying to people who are renting, there are some things you can do, but don't start installing anything. Don't go up into your loft and sort out the loft insulation yourselves if you are renting. That needs to be done by your landlord, because people who are renting can end up then having to sort of cope with the fact that if anything goes wrong, they become responsible. So, those are the big sorts of things. With where there are any issues, so people who do come to us, we are sort of giving advice that is based on the Energy Saving Trust. We have leaflets, and there's some here if anybody is interested, that we share with people. If people are in fuel poverty and have required fuel vouchers, that also comes with some advice on a lot of the practical things that you've been talking about. Heating the human and not the home is unfortunately an issue for a lot of the people that we're working with. It's it's a reality for people who maybe don't have choice. If you do have choice, you know, that's you know, it's one of the things in your arsenal of goods. A lot of our people don't have that. But you know, we signpost people to Energy Saving Trust, to the websites for their own energy providers, because most of them have some good practical advice, the things that you can do that take no time and very little cost, right the way up to the things that you can do that you know, are larger scale projects and more expensive. But we don't go into the nitty-gritty of the actual energy advice. If any of you are private renters and are, you know, there are issues with your properties, and you know that you're not just alone, it's an issue that a number of you are experiencing, one thing that one can do is to sort of see whether your tenants association can help. You know, one voice on its own might not get anywhere, but several voices might get somewhere. And the other thing to just sort of say is that Citizens Advice as an organisation, our National Citizens Advice, is actually an energy watchdog. So we collect a lot of evidence from the people who come to us on the issues that they're exploring, and we make sure that that is fed back to sort of the relevant bodies to see whether we can, you know, we're a voice that is highlighting energy issues. I think that's probably us in a nutshell.
Thank you very much. One of the things I was going to add to that is that, you know, if you are a homeowner and you're comfortable, but you know of people who are potentially in fuel poverty, and we're getting a cold snap apparently coming next week, please go and check up on them and make sure they're okay.
Yes, I would sort of say it can be quite hidden in our community who is struggling and who is not. And it is very difficult for people to kind of put their hand up and go, oh, I'm one of the people who's struggling. So I think if you belong to any organisations, if you run a business, you know, just making sure that there is information available to people who can just sort of pick it up and take it away, or a poster that somebody might or might not choose to look at that could just signpost them to help if they're struggling with energy costs or cost of living costs for that matter. You know, just doing that could be a very simple, very low-key way of ensuring that people know there is help. There's not a huge amount, but you know, if people at least come to an organisation like Citizens Advice, we can signpost them to the help that is available. So yeah, you can in all sorts of subtle ways just be making sure that the people around you, you know, a lot of the new developments will include a mix of social housing and privately owned housing. It's, you know, it can be very hidden who needs that help, but just making sure that it's available through any of the organisations or businesses that you're involved with, you know, or if somebody mentions something, kind of just sort of saying, as a first stop, we're one of, it's not that common anymore, but our Citizens Advice does have drop-ins on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and there are contact numbers. The advice line number is, it doesn't come directly through to Thame, but it does mean that on the days that the Thame office is closed, somebody can access the advice they need. And if a person does need that extra little bit of help to get the support that they need, they will be referred to the Thame office, and an advisor will contact them and make sure that they can access the advice they need. So it's there, it's a resource.
Thanks very much, thanks. I'll just show this. Karen mentioned the Eco Plus government scheme is coming in April. We're still waiting for more details on it. Apparently, it should be available to a wider group of people than it currently is. Currently, the grants that are available for helping with home insulation are really for people in fuel poverty, those who are on very low incomes coming into the household. This apparently is going to change that, but we still haven't got any detail from the government. The other scheme is the boiler upgrade scheme. If you wanted to get an air source or ground source heat pump, if you Google that on the government website, you can find out more details about that. None of these schemes are easy to apply for. None of this funding is easy to apply for. You have to be dogged, I think is the best word for it. But it's worth looking and to see what's available. The other one is from Oxfordshire County Council itself, the Sustainable Warmth Grants, which have been around for a while, and they are helping to provide funding for insulation and upgrading your home in terms of its thermal efficiency. What I was told the other night is that the funding was coming to an end, but secretly, and I'm not supposed to tell anybody, so I just broadcast it, it's going to be extended, but aimed primarily at those without gas boilers. In other words, they're targeting those with oil because that is the priority at the moment, to get people away from oil-fueled boilers, which is interesting because you need to find an alternative. And the thing about air source or ground source heat pumps is that they are quite mature technology, but they don't necessarily generate as much heat as a gas boiler or an oil-fired boiler. So you need to make sure that your home is very well insulated to start with, and you've got a really efficient underfloor heating system, for example, before you think about putting that in. Otherwise, you'll be paying a fortune for electricity. So it's balancing those things out. And this then starts to get quite complicated as to what to do, which is why it's well worth trying to get some more information. And one of the things I would strongly recommend is going to Low Carbon Oxford North's website, where they have 6 booklets like these, which you can download for free, and they are really good. I mean, they've really been well written. First one is Taking Stock, and tells you how to do an assessment of your home and what to think in terms of priorities, so you don't do everything in the first year unless you've got oodles of money and time. Later on, it goes on to what to do with the windows doors. No, these are from Low Carbon Oxford North. So the second one listed, third one, sorry, listed on that further information. If you Google Low Carbon Oxford North, you'll find that. Drafts and ventilations, they talk about solar panels and other booklets, they talk about ground and air source heat pumps and so on. They're really good advice. Low Carbon Hub, I really strongly recommend you look at as well. It's got a massive set of resources in terms of advice, people that you can contact. The other thing that's really good about that, and also Low Carbon Oxford North, they're much further ahead than we are. So there are people there that you can contact who have done these things. And we want to set that up in Thame in the future. So we've got some, we've got some benchmarks for people, but we haven't quite got there yet. So people that you can contact who will say, oh, I wouldn't have done that, but I would do this. And that's incredibly helpful advice. So go to that website. You will spend days on it. It's packed full of information. This one I was only told about the other. Oh, Cosy Homes Oxfordshire. Sorry, I'm jumping around a bit. Cosy Homes Oxfordshire is I've forgotten what they're called now, a community enterprise company. Is that the right term? Set up by Low Carbon Hub. And they are specifically looking at retrofitting homes. And so they will do a free survey to start with if you go to their website, which is basically putting information into their website. And then for something like £400, you can get somebody to come out and do a complete survey of your home and say, well, you need to do that and you need to do that, and I would prioritise it in this order to get the best return on your investment. And then, if you wanted to, they will project manage the whole thing for you as well, because this stuff potentially can get quite expensive if you're not careful. And so they've got reputable suppliers. I was asking somebody about this the other night, so who are the best people to go to, and is there a list? So, not really, but word of mouth is really good. And there are people in Thame who have done some really good retrofitting, and they've used some really reputable suppliers as well. And what I want to do is to start getting a very voluntary list, so it's not advocated by the town council or by me or anybody, but it's just to say, this person used these people, speak to them about it. But there is the Association of Environmentally Conscious Builders, who are based in Swindon, who they have lists of suppliers that you can then contact. The National Self-Build and National Self-Build and Renovation Centre is in Swindon, and they also have lists of potential suppliers. Better housing, better health. Can you speak to that, Karen? Because
yes,
I forgot about that one.
Yes, I forgot to mention it too. So it's a newer thing. I don't have any personal experience of better housing, better health, but I do know that Oxfordshire has signed up to it. Sort of, according to what I've looked at, it sort of says that in Oxfordshire, they're using it to target communities that have high health inequalities. So it's that link between your housing and health, which I think is a fairly sort of obvious one. And in Oxfordshire, they're looking to prioritise requests for support from residents who are living in poor quality private sector homes. And they'd be looking at people who are in fuel poverty, are vulnerable to the cold, and are living in homes with poor energy efficiency. How that actually works, I can sort of see that there's a referral system people can acquire, but I think it looks like there's fairly strict criteria, but it is something that demonstrates Oxfordshire appears to be sort of trying to look at ways of ensuring that there is some support for people where there's this link between the housing that they're living in and the health implications of that.
Thanks. So we've got just under 5 minutes before 8 o'clock. Did you have that question still?
Not a question.
Right, let me...
Putting a bag up your chimney may block the chimney and cause damp problems. What you can do is stick wool up your chimney, which allows a flow of air depending how hard you jam it up, which is desirable because that way you're ventilating and avoiding condensation.
Excuse me, on the same point, we actually installed one. It's actually made of sheep's wool, and it's a processed one, compressed, and you buy it from Amazon, and you get different shapes, sort of mainly oblong, and with a handle, and you actually put it up the chimney, and I think that is a very good product to think about buying.
So what's it called again?
It's sort of sheep blocker of a chimney. It's like a balloon, but it's made of sheep's wool.
So you shove a sheep up your chimney and it will be fantastic. Right, okay. So, what's his name? Sean. That's really interesting, actually, because and wool is a very good insulator as well, as we know, because we wear it.
I recently received one of these flyers through the post. I live in Towersey, which is off gas, and I was suspicious of it. Said, you can get grants for improvements in your house. However, it did have Oxfordshire County Council's logo on it, and I checked it out. It was called Welcome the Warmth. Because we are a low-income household, I had to prove that. Nevertheless, I managed to get some solar panels installed on my roof, 8 solar panels. So it is worth checking out these things. Sometimes you get phone calls and you think, is this genuine or not? This proved to be genuine, and I nearly didn't apply. So, you know, welcome the warmth. That was.
Was that recently, Catherine?
That was before Christmas, and I got them installed in January.
Okay.
Very quick.
Welcome the warmth. Did you have a question?
It wasn't just a question, really. It was just I used a thermal imaging camera that my son-in-law had to get off because he lives in a very old and very cold house, and he was checking his out. But I thought we live on Nelson Street, so it was worthwhile checking. And it highlighted a number of facts, not least was that our front door was horrendously leaky. And the principal problem was the letterbox. And we eventually found a magnetic cover on the inside, which seals positively, and it doesn't trap your fingers like a brush does, or those other flaps. And it's really very good, so it's worthwhile input.
I have to say that America and Canada have had the solution to this for years, and you have a mailbox outside the house, yeah, and don't have a letterbox on the door at all, and that's far more. I went leafleting yesterday, and apart from nearly getting my hand chewed off by a dog at one point, I feel sorry for the postman, and then getting your fingers trapped when you're trying to shove this thing through all the brushes and another metal thing on the other side, which then clamps on. So a mailbox on the outside, if you can do, is a much more practical solution. We're coming up to 8. Any further questions for anybody? Yes, let me just get the mic.
Thank you. You haven't talked about the black plastic stuff that you put around doors. You know, that funny... Yeah, thank you. Draft excluder.
I haven't, but that's also very sensible. If you've got drafts... the best place to get it is from most DIY places. They will actually stock it. It's quite a fiddly thing to do. If you've got a leaky front door, somebody was mentioning a moment ago, a quick solution is to put a door curtain up. At least for the winter. You can always take it down in the summertime if you want, but very quickly putting one up in wintertime will stop a lot of the drafts if you can possibly do it. Charles, let me just get the mic to you.
Isn't really a question. It's just what I want everybody to know is what an amazing job this guy is doing with Nigel's help and everybody else's. So we were sitting round on a Zoom conference, I think, and we've been talking to David about something he'd like to get involved with, and the idea of Cosy Homes came up. And he said, yes, love to do that. And it's an example of what somebody can do, taking initiative to build this, and this is just the start. So, first of all, I'd like to say thanks, David, and fantastic to all of you.
Yeah.
Secondly, this is an example of what we can all do. We can all make our contributions. There is so much to do in Thame, so here's a fine example to follow on from.
Gone all shy now. But Charles said a really important thing there. Everybody in Thame can take part and can help out and help other people as well and share their knowledge. This is what I want us to be able to set up in time, is people share their experience, because there's nothing better than word of mouth rather than some association which says that this fitter is better than this fitter or whatever. So we want to try to get that going, because there's lots of we've got a drone pilot in Thame, for goodness sake. We've got all sorts of expertise, so it's really possible, and I really think we should do it. Anyway, and also just wanted to say a big thank you to Becky Reed, who, I don't know if you're aware, is the relatively new, or September was it, Town Council Environmental Projects Officer, and she's been embracing all of the many environmental projects which are going on in Thame and really helping us out and supporting us. So thanks very much, Becky, I really appreciate it.
Can I ask, for those of you who don't know, we've launched an environmental newsletter as well. I just administer it. The information all comes from people like David and Charles, who are doing so much. If you are interested in receiving it, please come and just give me your email address and I can add you to it. And I might ask David if there's a way of maybe getting a summary of some of these links and maybe the link to the video, if it can be replayed, that we can put out that way.
So, big thank you to Raw Pictures, who have been streaming this evening for us. And that came as a request from people on Love Thame who said, we can't necessarily get to the town hall, but we'd like to be able to see that. That's on our YouTube channel, our Cosy Thame YouTube channel, which was set up yesterday. It also has the detailed videos, rather than the summary, which we showed you this evening, that Nigel shot back in November, December. And it will also have a recording of this session, because YouTube apparently cleverly records it, but Raw Pictures have kindly said that they're recording it just in case something goes wrong with YouTube. So we will have a recording of it. And I don't know how yet, but I'm going to put the slides up as well, so they'll be available. Maybe on the section of Thame Green Living's website, or maybe on the council website, or both, or where, I'm not sure, but they'll be there, and I'll post in Love Thame to say this is where they are. So yes. Right.
Can you hire the heat cameras at all to check your own house out?
Yes, there are companies that hire them out. You can just Google that to find thermal imaging cameras. To buy them, they're quite expensive. They're about £1,500 for a decent one, the ones that we were using. As I said at the beginning, we put in a grant application now to try to get one for Thame, so that it can then be part of, I always forget it, the equipment hire. The equipment bank, so it will be available through the equipment bank for people to be able to hire. So we're waiting to hear about that at the moment. So it won't be in time for this winter, but for next winter it will be possible. Right. Any other questions? Oh, one more at the back, sorry.
I may be able to get access to a thermal imaging camera for a day or a 24-hour period through connections at work. Would it be an idea of getting some properties, addresses together, and we hit that in the next week or so, the cold spot, and feed that information back to the group? But we can talk.
Yes, because I've still got a list of the ones not covered, and that would be fantastic. Just wanted to, thank you very much for that. Just also wanted to mention, Helena has an iPad or iPhone with a thermal imaging camera that plugs onto it as well. And that was about £300 or how much was it? About £250 apparently. So you can get one at quite low cost. Sorry, say again?
It's a really small little thing, and sadly I've just dropped it off with someone, or I could have shown everyone. It's a tiny little thing that plugs into an iPhone, just the same dock that you put the charger, and then you download this FLIR app, F-L-I-R, same company as the big camera, and you can still get quite meaningful stuff that just comes up on your phone. So yeah, it was about £250. So if a group of sort of neighbours wanted to get together, yeah.
When I had my roof insulated, a few years later I wanted to look into remortgaging, and they told me I couldn't because my roof was insulated with foam that could potentially cause a damp issue. Turns out it doesn't, but it seemed like the insurance companies were not on the same page as the protocols for energy, and I wondered if that had changed. Do we know?
I hope so, that's all I can say, because that's absurd. I could... Oh, do you have the answer to the question?
Yeah.
Sorry.
You should be sitting here. Yeah.
And I work closely with a roofer. One of the biggest incidents and problems with this insulation is damp. And the fitters don't fit a ventilation tile, which is what you saw on the photos there, those small patches. Yeah. So therefore the condensation builds up into the roof, causing damp into the low upper section of the house. So if you are fitting insulation, always do it by a registered fitter that will fit the equivalent or the appropriate ventilation tiles or vents to make sure that that is avoided, which is probably why the mortgage company jumped on that bandwagon, because the ventilation needs to be at appropriate level so they can mortgage it.
I know we're over time, but very quickly on that, from personal experience, another really good thing to invest in if you've got some damp problems in your house is a dehumidifier. And I've got one, and I've also got a studio flat in London which we dry clothes inside in the winter time, which isn't great because you get lots of humidity. Dehumidifiers are brilliant for removing the humidity out of the air. They make the air much healthier for you as well, which is really important. Sorry, say again? They're quicker for drying clothes and much cheaper for drying clothes. Sorry, they're much cheaper for drying clothes than tumble dryers, which are really quite expensive. So, and also, I was talking to somebody, maybe you've got more experience on this than I have, but damp walls tend to be colder, particularly in older properties, because they're less porous, which means there's less air trapped in them in order to create a thermal barrier, and therefore they conduct the heat away from the room. So if you can keep the humidity in the room low, not dreadfully low, but you need to have proper ventilation in a home, but reduce the humidity in your home, you will be more healthy, and you also will probably find that your heating costs have gone down as well. Last thing, we've gone way over time. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. Thank you. And leaflets.